Well, good afternoon again to everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our Countdown to Voting presentation this afternoon. We really appreciate you spending your lunch with us. And we wanted to especially do this presentation today because we only have a couple of days of early voting left. And we wanted to give out some reminders, some crucial bits of information before you go vote. And today is especially a special day because you can vote until 10 p.m. if you're in Harris County. So you don't have a 7 p.m. cutoff today, you can vote until 10 p.m. So Emgage is a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're presenting as, and we're focused on building the electoral power of Muslim communities. We do a lot of voter registration, engagement, and education through programs like this one. And we're also part of a family of organizations if you wanted to check those out. But we're here today as Emgage, the C3. So like I said, there are only a couple of days of voting left. The last day to vote early is tomorrow, Friday. If you were planning on voting on the weekend, I'm sorry that opportunity is passed. There was only one weekend of early voting that passed last weekend. But in a couple of counties across Texas, especially the larger ones, polls might have extended hours today. It's until 10 p.m. in Harris County, 9 p.m. in Dallas County. And you can check out this bit.ly link if you want to see a spreadsheet of all the voting hours for all the counties. So you can control F and find your county in case it's not up here. But standard voting hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if you were planning on voting on Friday or on election day, it's going to be that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. standard time. There are a couple of benefits to voting during early voting, one of which is we don't know how much turnout there's going to be on election day exactly, but we do know a lot of people do wait and vote on election day itself. So if you want shorter lines, you may want to vote during early voting. A lot of counties, you can go to their county websites, to their polling location finders, and you can even check the wait times for different polling locations. If you have a couple near you, you can go to everymuslimcounts.com, which is our voting info page. And you can look up your county, or you can just reach out to us if you need help finding your county, because a lot of places will have an indicator like Fort Bend does, Harris County does, Tarrant County does, Dallas County does. You can check what the wait time is. You also have time to address any issues. Like if you go at 7 p.m. tomorrow and you forgot your ID, you kind of then have to go vote on election day. That happens election day, you can't go vote again. If you have an issue and you have to fill out extra paperwork and you want more time to talk to, say, a legal protection volunteer or an attorney through that 1-866 our vote number that is the early vote and election day helpline for voters. You'll have more time to address that if you have voted during early voting. Then last, if you have moved across counties, so not within like the same county, but if you just like changed counties entirely and you forgot to update your voter registration, you have to vote during early voting only. You have to go to a designated place in your county that you can find out by calling them, or you can contact us. For Harris County, it's NRG Stadium, NRG Arena. And for Fort Bend County, it's the elections office in Rosenberg. For a lot of places also, it's the elections office, but you should call ahead and check. If you are voting and you change your counties, you have to vote on a limited ballot. You can only do that during early voting. So I'm going in the wrong direction because I wish I could turn back time. I'm going backwards on this presentation. So I want to step back first and talk about the big picture of what we're talking about when we ask people to vote. I think there are certain positions that suck up or take up a lot of time in the media or when we talk about voting. For example, I imagine everyone or almost everyone we're going to reach out to has heard of Beto O'Rourke and Greg Abbott because they're running for governor. It's a very visible position. But there are different levels of government that we all get to elect, including judicial, legislative, executive. Then there's also the agency apparatus that crosses over with some other parts of the other branches of government that is also very important. So the parts of Texas, like in Texas, we have the governor, and then we have all these other elected positions that run agencies like the land commissioner, whom we're going to talk about in a bit, the railroad commissioner, the agriculture commissioner, all these people, they run agencies in Texas, and while they're technically like part of, I believe, the executive branch of Texas that executes laws, they're like agency heads in their own right to help run the administration of things in Texas, and they tend to get less attention because they're just not in the news as much. They're a little bit more obscure what their offices do. But we hope after today you won't feel that way. We also in Texas, for one, sorry, was there a question? No. In Texas, we also elect our judges. We're one of only like a handful, I believe 6 states to do so at every level of the court system, of our state court system. And then last, just want to give a reminder to everyone who may be watching that we talk a lot in the US about the federal government, but we don't actually have many of those positions on our ballot. When we say go out and vote, if the first person you think of is your congressperson or your senator, and in Texas, we actually don't have any senators for the federal government up for election. We have our state senators, but not our sitting senators, Ted Cruz and John Cornyn. They're not on the ballot. We talk a lot about who's responsible for what on a federal level, and that's different from most of the people we're electing. Across Texas for this particular election, we're mostly, the only federal position on your ballot is likely going to be a congressperson. So if you have issues with federal policy, etc., now ask yourself, like, who's really responsible for this and where are they on my ballot? There may be only one person there who's that influential or has a vote on federal issues, your congressperson. We do have all of these positions. In Harris County, in fact, you get to weigh in on so many positions that your ballot is 2 pages long. And we hope you take that into account when you go vote. We're electing the governor, lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the state comptroller, just kind of like the person who administers the budget of the state, land commissioner, agriculture commissioner, railroad commissioner, and then all the state legislative positions, all of our Congress people in the US House, our state level judges, and a lot of local positions that I didn't have space to list here, but that we will talk about, I promise. If I'm actually gonna exit and go back because I somehow went to the last last PowerPoint. Back in a second. Do y'all want to banter among yourselves while I find where I was? I guess not.
I realized I'm not muted, so I went to unmute myself. So I'm glad I didn't make any loud noise during your presentation, but all right, you're all set now.
So we as Emgage, we encourage everyone to go vote. We also want you to be an informed voter. So we really encourage you to ask yourself and check like who's on my ballot. So you can check your sample ballot before you go vote and make sure what district you're in. Those districts changed during redistricting. We want you to know who you're voting for. The people representing you may have changed. So you can check and you can get links to your sample ballot on everymuslimcounts.com. We also want you to ask yourselves, what will they be responsible for? It relates to the previous slides. If you are concerned about, say, bail reform or issues relating to criminal law, is that relevant when you are voting for the Texas Supreme Court when that only hears civil cases? Is that relevant when you're voting for judges who are family law judges? No, not really. No, we sometimes see voters carry frustrations over certain issues over to positions that actually have no power to impact the issues the voter is currently concerned about. We also want you to ask, how is this person who I'm voting for going to be making decisions? Do they do it individually or are they part of a body? For example, we elect commissioners on a local level in a county. In Harris County, you have the Harris County Commissioners Court. In Fort Bend, we have the Fort Bend Commissioners Court. In Collin County, we have the Collin County Commissioners Court. This group of people votes on issues as like a group of 5. So as you're making decisions about who to vote for, think of how it'll affect the balance of the balance of power in that body. If you're voting for a trial judge versus an appellate judge, which we'll also talk a little bit more about later, trial judges sit in their own courtrooms and they make decisions right there, and that's kind of it. They don't really have to consult with anyone else. When you're voting for appellate level judges, whether it's the courts of appeals or it's the Texas Supreme Court or the equivalent for criminal law, those judges don't make decisions by themselves. They hear cases in groups of 3, and sometimes they'll hear cases as an entire court of 9. So think about how that impacts your vote. Then last, if you are voting for someone who's held elected office before, you'd make sure to check out the record of what they've done if you have time. Of course, we're getting up towards the end of early voting, but there are a lot of resources available for you to take a look before you go vote. If you're standing in line in a coffee shop, if you have some night downtime, if you're even standing in line to vote and you're not yet inside the polling place and the line is so long it's outside the 100-foot line, you can still use your phone. But you can look up what elected officials have done recently on this directory the Texas Tribune has. It's a nonpartisan resource. The entire paper is a nonpartisan nonprofit media source. TexasTribune.org/directory, and you can go in and search and check what news stories have been in there recently about the person you're looking up, and you can see like how long they've served and their background. It's a great quick fact sheet to look at folks, especially less familiar positions like, say, Railroad Commissioner. You can go look up people like Wayne Christensen, who's the current Railroad Commissioner, and see what news stories have been about him recently. You can also check out candidate forums by nonpartisan groups like Emgage. Ours is kind of over, but there are groups out there that have held these forums for different candidates, and if they have videos or summaries of what went on, you can check those out. The League of Women Voters has a great resource that's a voter's guide for each position that you can go in and look up by entering your address so that only the positions on your ballot show up. It's very handy. Then last, I'm going to make a shameless plug for Engage's own radio show. I'm going to make this plug shamelessly because I think it is a valuable show to tune in on, where we interview candidates. We invite candidates from both parties who are on the ballot, and we're on air 7 p.m. during the week and on Sunday at 6. And we have 4 more shows left. So if you want to tune in and hear about especially more local level candidates in Harrison, Fort Bend County, we have that resource for you. Okay. Next, I want to highlight these 4 positions because they tend to be misunderstood across Texas a lot, and all of these are positions that statewide you're going to get to vote on. So no matter if you're tuning in from Dallas, I don't see anyone here from Dallas, but if you want to watch this later, you can vote for these 4 positions. First off, Lieutenant Governor, we all talk about the governor a lot. We talk about Lieutenant Governor a bit less. And a lot of people tend to make an analogy and say that the Lieutenant Governor is maybe kind of like the Vice President equivalent to the president when it comes to the governor. That's not quite right. Texas is very unusual in the level of power the Lieutenant Governor has. And so that analogy is useful to an extent, but not completely. Our Lieutenant Governor actually heads the Texas Senate, which means that if you're interested in advocating for any issues that are going to end up as bills in the Texas legislature, you need the Lieutenant Governor to be on board. They don't have a ceremonial role. They actually get to schedule bills that have been passed by the House or bills originating within the Senate. They schedule those for a hearing. If you don't have Lieutenant Governor on your side, your bill is never going to get a hearing and is never going to become law. The Lieutenant Governor also decides who chairs and vice chairs Senate committees and sets them up. So, for example, there was a call after the tragedy in Uvalde for there to be a special session for the governor to call that, to have the Texas legislature come back to Austin and explore bills and hear bills related to gun violence. And that didn't happen, but if it had, the Lieutenant Governor would have had a role in setting up the committees and deciding who gets to serve there. The Lieutenant Governor also has a big role in deciding questions of procedure in the Senate, which can actually make or break like parts of bills and amendments to them. And he or she, but historically it has been a he, that also has a lot of power in the state budget. And then, of course, if something happens to the governor, or if the governor is out of state, out of country, absent for some reason, the lieutenant governor takes over. And with redistricting that just happened, but is supposed to happen again in 2023 by court order, the lieutenant governor is also has the power to weigh in on redistricting beyond their role as just president of the Senate, because they're a member of the 5-person commission that gets to draw the maps for Texas if the legislature itself doesn't agree on what to do. And we are having redistricting again in 2023, so that's something to keep in mind. Do you want this, as you vote on the lieutenant governor candidate, like, do you want this person to weigh in on redistricting? Something to consider.
May I ask a question?
Sorry.
So then I just want to confirm what you said, that it's up to the lieutenant governor what the Senate even discusses or debates or votes on?
Yes, the lieutenant governor schedules an I forget the technical term, but it's like an agenda and priorities for the Senate before the term starts. Our current lieutenant governor is Dan Patrick, and he's already done so. And then once the session starts in the Senate, for stuff to get heard, they have to be scheduled for on the calendar committee, and the person who decides, first, the person who has a say in whether those get scheduled or not is lieutenant governor. Yes, let me backtrack. Before something gets heard by the entire Senate, like a bill, say the House passes something, it has to be scheduled by the calendar committee, and then it can be heard on the Senate for after that. So yeah, without the lieutenant governor agreeing on whether or not your bill should be heard, it's not going to happen. Why do I keep doing that? I'm so sorry. We're also tired from election work that my PowerPoint skills have gone to.
And the PowerPoint is insistent. It's so important that you go vote.
It looks like
Yeah.
if you go too far to the bottom right corner, that's how it goes all the way to the end. So if you just stay away from that bottom right corner.
Thank you. You're right. Point for you. There's no prize, but I'll give you a point. Next office up, that's kind of gets overlooked, but is actually very important, especially for environmental issues, is the land commissioner. The head of the general land office, it sounds like quite boring. You might never have interacted with it. I personally never interacted with it until I was doing oil and gas transactional law and needed like information related to land. But the land commissioner is not just responsible for the management of the Texas state lands. This person also is in charge of disaster management. If any of you all are in the Harris County area, you may remember that last year, when a lot of federal funds were distributed for flood relief, it was the general land office that determined where in Texas they went to. So that's just one example of how the general land office is important. The GLO is also responsible for administering veterans services, which is not, again, the first thing that comes in mind, but it is a responsibility of the office. And last, they're responsible for preserving historical sites, administering them, like the Alamo and Texas historical archives. So if I think historians out there, its office is going to be like really important for you. Texas history is your thing. Also on your statewide ballot is the railroad commissioner. The number one question I tend to get about this is, why is there a commission just for railroads? There isn't. Railroads are actually no longer regulated at all by the railroad commissioner. We just haven't changed the name. You'll have to ask the Texas legislature why. The Texas Department of Public Safety and Transportation, I believe, Transportation Department of Texas does railroad regulation. The railroad commissioner actually is the oil and gas commissioner. They are responsible for pretty much all regulation of the oil and gas industry, including issuing permits for mining and drilling and for pipeline placement. They play a big role in environmental law. If you're interested in, again, environmental issues, this is a big office to pay attention to, because Texas's energy portfolio as well as the administration of federal laws in Texas that are actually done through Texas state agencies are under the jurisdiction of the Railroad Commissioner. And just a few of those include federal laws relating to surface coal mining, our Safe Drinking Water Act, pipeline safety, conservation, and the Clean Water Act. So a fun fact here, Texas got permission. Texas used to have federal officials that could, there used to be more federal oversight of how Texas enforced environmental laws like the Clean Water Act, but some time ago they got a state permission to just have state agencies do it instead. So yeah. Next, I'd like to go over another misunderstood court, which is the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And we're just going to talk a bit about Texas courts in general. So you may have heard of the US Supreme Court, or other states that have one Supreme Court. We're Texas and we have two. We have one court that does civil matters and one court that hears criminal matters, including death penalty.
Can I introduce
a question?
I'm sorry, you're not on the slide that talks about this. You're on a trivia time slide.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Your PowerPoint is haunted today for sure.
Let me just pull up the PDF. Sorry, I have it somewhere.
Okay.
Can everyone see a PDF that says court structure of Texas?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, in Texas, we have those two Supreme Courts and we get to vote on the justices. So if you're upset about how, say, the death penalty cases are handled, that's not relevant to the Supreme Court. The Court of Criminal Appeals is the one that just hears criminal cases. We also have on our ballots appellate justices that are one level below the Supreme Court. They're going to be the ones that hear most appeals of trial court decisions in the state. Most cases do not make it all the way up to the Supreme Court level. The way that the court system works is if the Supreme Court rules on something, again, it's going to be a civil issue, but once they rule on something, that's applicable to all of the courts of appeals. That's what we call precedent for all of them, because it's the highest court in the land. Same thing for criminal matters for the Court of Criminal Appeals. The courts of appeals have to follow those precedents, but each one does not do the same for the others. So if say you sue someone over a contract case in Harris County, you don't like the way the trial court decision comes out, you appeal it, it's going to go to one of the two appellate courts in Houston, the 1st or the 14th. If you want to know why we have two courts for historical reasons, ask the General Land Office, since they're responsible for historical preservation. That was supposed to be a joke, and I see no smile inside. Taken, moving on. But once you appeal a decision and it's in the Court of Appeals, they don't have to look and see what other courts of appeals in, say, Austin, Dallas, Amarillo, they don't have to look and see what other places in Texas have done. They look and see what that particular court has done. But when the Supreme Court rules on something, it's law for everyone in the state. So that's just how precedent works in the court system in Texas. It's not the same in other states necessarily. This is just how it is in Texas. So when you vote for your appeals court justices, you're voting for who gets to make the laws for just like your area. What's considered like judge-made law. Anyway, of course, they don't write legislation and make that kind of law. We have two courts of appeals in Houston, Harris County. They cover a 10-county area. I think this is a system that's frustrating for lawyers, but it does mean that they get to hear more cases just because we have so many people in this 10-county area that includes Harris, Brazoria, Fort Bend, Waller, Grimes, and 5 other counties that I don't think anyone here lives in, since I think most people here are Harris County voters. But the Court of Appeals, they hear everything except for death penalty cases, so they do also hear criminal cases. The rest of the courts I'm about to talk about are what we call like trial courts. They don't hear cases. District courts are state courts, and when you go vote for your district courts, I think it's important to bear in mind what is the court you're voting for? It should say on your ballot description a court number. The different courts are split up so that, at least in Harris County, they're split up so that certain courts hear just family court cases, certain courts hear criminal cases, and other courts just hear like general civil cases that aren't covered by the other courts. There are also courts that only hear probate cases at the county level. So these are courts that are created by like statute to hear particular kinds of cases. And kind of the more lower we go down this list, the closer we kind of get to maybe disputes that might arise in your daily life. Like if you like lose a loved one and have to have their will administered, you're going to end up in a probate court. If you're going to get a divorce, you would end up in a family court. If you have someone in your family who like maybe it's a question over whether they can handle their own affairs, then they're going to end up in a court like a constitutional county court or a district court or one of these statutory probate courts. I know it's a lot to take in, but just generally keep in mind as you're voting that if you're upset about particular issues, then check what jurisdiction your court has. The criminal courts in Harris County that are county level are labeled like criminal court at law number, etc. So you'll be able to identify on your ballot which courts are responsible for criminal matters if that's what's primarily motivating you to vote. We've had a lot of hot topics in the area of criminal justice lately, but it's not the entire court system that's responsible to that, and I hope you keep that in mind as you go vote. So. Last, we have municipal and justice courts, also called JP courts. If you've been listening into our show, you may know that you don't have to be a lawyer to be a JP court judge. They hear smaller level civil actions, evictions, very low level criminal matters, and also things like truancy cases. If you go to a JP court and you don't like the outcome, you can appeal it and it would go to a county level court. But yeah, that's just a general overview of the Texas court system. If you're in Harris County, you have, I think, more judicial positions on your ballot than anything else. So I'm sure you fill those out and have your voice heard, because a lot of people may go in and vote for the top of the ballot and skip them. And that means that your voice is just going to count more if you go vote. On a last note, I want to add, you when you go to vote and you see a county judge on your ballot, that's not a judge like a judicial position. That's just the head of the commissioner's court of your county. That's executive level, like county leadership. You can analogize it to like the governor of your county, kind of, except that they just get one vote when your county commissioner's court is deciding things. Okay, let's wrap up and do some quick trivia, and then take questions if you all have questions about your rights at the polls.
I think we're still in the PDF. I think you have to stop sharing and then switch to the next program. It doesn't like to go from program to program. Zoom doesn't.
I see.
Yeah.
See, thank you.
But I'm ready for the trivia.
Yeah, it does that for privacy reasons, so you don't accidentally switch to something personal.
I see. Thank you. I have nothing personal on my laptop. It's all work. All of my tabs. Can everyone see question 1 trivia time?
Not yet.
You haven't shared.
Oh.
Or if you did, it would didn't work. There we go. Okay.
Does someone else want to read out the questions so it's not just my voice?
Do you have to have a current ID to vote?
I put my name in the chat and it's no.
All are correct. It's awesome. You can Most of you can use an ID that expired up to 4 years ago. And if you are over 70, it actually doesn't matter when your ID expired. You can just use it. It's okay also if your ID was shows an address different than what you live in, because your driver's license and other ID is not used to prove your address. Really, it's used to prove your identity. So if you've been putting off voting because your ID is not up to date, then you're good. Oh, go Nimra, you put a complete answer in the chat. Thank you. We'll do just a few more and then we'll wrap up.
Question 2. Help! I have held on to my mail-in ballot. Can I turn it in at a polling location?
I've held on to my. Yes.
No.
Oh, I knew
No, you
it.
can't.
That's
Oh,
why it was a question. No, you have to bring it to NRG, right? In
Yes,
Harrison County.
thank you. Yeah.
I was wrong.
You, okay, maybe the question is confusing. Sorry about that. So if you have applied to vote by mail and you got your ballot, you have your actual ballot, and you filled it out, but you like forgot to mail it in or something happened, you can't go to a polling location to submit it. You can only go to a polling location to cancel it and then vote in person. If you want to turn in your mail-in ballot and just have that count, you have to check your county to see what your designated drop-off site is. In Harris County, it's NRG Arena. In Fort Bend County, it's again the elections office. And a lot of counties across Texas do, it's going to be the elections office, but you do have to go turn it in at that one particular location. You can't just go somewhere where there's voting going on and ask the elections staff to take your ballot. Oh, and if you have sent in your mail-in ballot, but doesn't show up as having been accepted when you check it online, then you can still go vote. You'll just vote provisionally, and then the county's election staff are supposed to check and count whichever one comes in first. If your mail-in ballot comes in up until the deadline, which is 7 p.m. on election day or 5 p.m. the day after election day, if you postmarked your ballot so that it shows you sent it before 7 p.m. on election day. If that happens, the county's election staff are supposed to count whichever comes in first. If they
I have a follow-up to this trick question. I have a follow-up, which is, does that mean that essentially every county in Texas has one drop-off place for a mail-in ballot that you haven't mailed in yet? Do you know?
That's a great question.
Okay.
I like to call them submission places rather than drop-off places necessarily.
Yeah.
Different counties use different terms. We don't have drop-off boxes anymore in Texas. We did in 2020. We don't. They've been banned. But the place where you can go in and physically hand in your ballot is going to be just one place per county that you can find by checking your county's site, or you can email us. You can email us and ask at txvotes@emgageusa.org.
Yes. I'll read this one. Can I bring a translator with me to the polls? Yes.
I won. I was
Yes.
first.
You were
I
first.
got it first, though.
You were busy reading. It's perfect. And you can bring someone with you to translate, except besides your employer or union rep. What you can't plan on is to call someone while you're in the polling place and be like, what does this mean? Because you can't use your phone inside the polling place. You have to bring someone with you. And I believe there's one more question. Oh, no, there's no more questions. Sorry. It might be out of order. I think we can go ahead and wrap up because it's getting to be close to time anyway. If you have any questions or you want to contact us, we have very dedicated voting rights people on staff. We have experienced election judges on staff. We have me, and I'm an attorney for whatever that's worth. Not practicing, but I can read the election code. And you can also call 1-866 Our Vote or 1-866 API Vote if you're at the polls. Our website's everymuslimcounts.com, and our emails are down there. You can reach out to one of us personally, or you can email our general email at txvotes@emgageusa.org. And whatever you do, we hope you go vote, because turnout is down in Texas compared to the same time last year, and you don't want to be one of those people who counts themselves out. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki.
All right, shall we stop recording now, or are you gonna do a Q&A?
Oh, do you all have any questions? Can cats vote? No.
Why not? That's anti-feline discrimination. So there was something that I wanted to follow up on. So today is Thursday, November 3rd. And so tonight in Harris County, polls are open till 10 p.m. Is that every county in this area or just Harris?
Just Harris.
Okay.
You have to check your county. A lot of counties, they still close at 5 or 6 or whatever the usual time is. There's just select counties, like I know Collin County in Dallas is open. The Dallas-Fort Worth area is open till 9, and then Harris is until 10. But it's a county by county decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you for answering. Anybody else?
I don't have any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Nilafar. This was really great. And I love the diagram with the explanations of the courts, because those are some things that I've always wondered about. So thank you.
Oh, don't thank me. Thank the Texas court system for making that diagram available.
Okay.
I pulled it from their website.
Okay, thank you.